Hello everyone, my name's Ian and I have type 1 diabetes. Like I said, my name's Ian and a couple weeks ago I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 22. I just wanted to start this video series as kind of a journey through my life as I'm going through this new development and how it overall affects me. The changes I have to make, the things I have to go through on a day-to-day basis, and it's kind of an educational tool for those who may be going through a similar experience, kind of a late onset diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, or anyone who may just be curious as to what it's like being a type 1 diabetic and kind of what we have to go through every day. So I'll just start by letting you get to know me a little bit. So my name is Ian. I'm in Spokane, Washington. I'm 22 years old. I'm a full-time student at Eastern Washington University. I work 2 jobs, one at UPS and one at a restaurant. And like I said, a couple weeks ago, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now, I was really lucky. Most people who get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they go into hyperglycemia, which is, or I guess it'd be hyperglycemic attack. Technically, I believe, but it's where their blood sugar is so high that they actually get really sick and usually end up hospitalized, and it's a really, really terrible experience. I was lucky. I didn't have to go through that. When I was born, my great-grandmother actually had type 1 diabetes. So when I was born, these people who were part of a research study asked my family if it would be okay if I partook in this research study. So I did a heel prick and tested my blood, and they're essentially testing for these 5 antibodies in our blood that they know have a correlation to type 1 diabetes. So everyone who has type 1 diabetes is positive for these 5 markers, but not everyone who's positive for these 5 markers has type 1 diabetes. So they're studying the correlation between these antibodies and type 1 diabetes. So when I was 8 years old, they kind of sent an at-home kit to prick my finger and send in some blood so they could do another test just to kind of follow up. And then I did another one when I turned 16. And then after that one, when I was 16, they reached out and they said, hey, would you like to participate in this study on a monthly basis? You'd go to a lab, you'd have blood drawn, you'd mail it to us, and we send you a check for $60 every month for participating in the study. So obviously, as a 16-year-old, just got my driver's license and I needed some gas money, so $60 a month was like, yeah, I'll for sure, I'll partake in this this study. And so I started going every month, and every few months they'd kind of send me the results of the test for these antibodies, and I kind of bounce between a 50% chance of developing type 1 based off of their research, or an 80% chance of developing type 1 based off of their, their research. And kind of just go back and forth between that. Where 50% is kind of where everyone stands. You either get it or you don't. So 80% is where that really kind of jumps up and shows that you're more of an at-risk person. So here I am, about 6 years later. I'm 22 years old. And I'm still doing the study, so I've been doing it for about 6 years. And I get a call beginning of December while I'm at school, and it's one of the ladies from the research study, and she goes, Ian, so you've been tested positive for all 5 of the markers for quite a while now. And one of the things that we test for is your HbA1c levels. And your HbA1c levels have been on a little of the high side for a while now, but we've noticed kind of a steady increase in the last couple months. We think that you should go see your doctor. So it was December, I think 27th of 2018, I went and I saw my doctor. And she was like, you know what, you're fine. Right now, we would classify you as a pre-diabetic because your HbA1c levels aren't as high as a type 1 diabetic's, but just kind of pay attention to it and stuff like that. And, several years back, I got a glucometer, a glucose meter from the study so that I could do my own tests at home to test my blood glucose levels. So I had that, and so I've been kind of just every few days, just kind of check what my blood glucose was to see if there was anything alarming. And then about a couple weeks into January, I noticed that my blood glucose level was really, really high. I was like, oh, this is a little bit alarming. And I kind of shrugged it off at first. And then I took another test the next day, and it was really high. It was even higher. I was into like the 300 range, which is really high for a type 1 diabetic. If you are a type 1 diabetic, the normal range is anywhere from somewhere around like 70 to 80-ish to like 160-ish, depending on who you are, your weight, height, age. It kind of varies for everyone. But 300 is definitely really, really high. So I called my doctor and I scheduled another appointment. And unfortunately, the only appointment I could get in was a couple weeks out. So I was waiting for it, kind of keeping an eye on my blood sugar, and my blood sugar was just getting higher and higher and higher. At this point, I was at about 450 on my blood glucose reading, and so I called the doctor again. I was like, I need to get in soon. I'm getting kind of scared. I'm kind of afraid to eat dinner, afraid that it's going to spike my blood sugar too high. I was kind of uneducated on what type 1 diabetes was exactly, even though I've been a part of this test for majority of my life. And I was scared that if I ate food at such high glucose levels, I'd go to bed and I'd never wake up. Which generally that's not the case. That's not gonna happen. But finally they're like, you know what? Just go to urgent care, and they can run a few tests and make sure that you don't need to spend a night in the hospital. That you're not gonna end up with ketoacidosis, I think is what it's called. There's these things in your blood when you have really high blood sugar called ketones. And it's pretty much, that's the sickness that happens when you have a ridiculously high blood glucose levels. Excuse me. And so I go to the urgent care, and he does a blood glucose test, and it's like 450, and I have the paperwork showing that my HbA1c levels are now at 7.9, which is really high. They usually start diabetes diagnoses at around 6.5 to 7. So 7.9 is quite high. So he takes the blood glucose test, and he comes back in and he tells me, he's like, you definitely have diabetes. I think he was unaware of the fact that I'd been in this study, even though I kind of mentioned it to him and explained it to him, but he took it as a type 2 diabetes, not type 1. So he gave me a drug called Metformin, which is usually treatment for a type 2 diabetic, where it essentially takes the insulin that your body still can produce and optimizes it. It makes it work better, work stronger. That wasn't gonna help me. Excuse me. That wasn't gonna help me. I had type 1 diabetes, where my pancreas doesn't make insulin. So a drug that optimizes the insulin that I do make isn't going to do anything when you don't actually have any insulin in your system. So he gave me the Metformin, and I was taking it. I mean, I'm not an expert. I wasn't sure exactly what to what to do. So I just took the Metformin, not really knowing the fact that it was a treatment for type 2. I knew that I was type 1 because of the tests to the research study. But I was able to get into my doctor about a week later after that, and she was like, yeah, metformin's not gonna do anything for you. We'll get you started on insulin. And so that's when I started on insulin, got my official diagnoses, and that's kind of where the beginning of my journey as a type 1 diabetic really starts. All right, so that's kind of my story of, my diagnosis and how I kind of be. So I got really lucky. Like I said before, I got really lucky that I didn't have to get super sick and end up in the hospital. That would have really sucked. And that's generally how I feel most people, when they get diagnosed, end up sick like that. But I got lucky. So, that's kind of this first episode in this series. Just kind of get to know me and get to know where I am and how I got to my diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. So I'm going to keep making more videos, just kind of going through each kind of new, how do I put this? Just kind of new experience, I guess. I'm still going to the doctor a lot because we're still figuring out a lot of this stuff for me. I'm still learning a lot. There's a lot about type 1 diabetes that I still don't know. Like, I haven't even started carb counting yet or anything like that. I'm on a slider scale for insulin. So I'll make another video talking all about that, talking about my gear and what I'm doing. But this is it for this first episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. I really want to try and get these videos out there. So the more that you help me out with those likes and those subscriptions will really help this content get out there. But I appreciate you watching. I'll be back with another video on type 1 diabetes. Thank you so much for watching and have a good night.